Welcome to Two Couples Coaches podcast, where certified relational life coaches Bev and Suzette guide you through the highs, lows, and in-betweens of love and relationships. Trained by Terry Real and the Relational Life Institute, Bev and Suzette help couples and individuals create deeper connections. Whether you are in a relationship that spans many years, navigating a new relationship, or simply seeking better ways to communicate, this podcast is your weekly roadmap to love, deeper connection, and relational growth. So now, please welcome the hosts of Two Couples Coaches, Bev and Suzette.
Hello, Bev. How are you
Hi,
today?
Suzette. Good, thanks. Lovely to be here again.
I was curious, what you're in Israel. What's the weather like in Israel? Because I've got my heated blanket this morning on me. Are you already in summer? Is it hot there?
It's always hot, yeah. No, it is hot. It's
I'm
actually
jealous.
lovely now. It's almost like autumn.
Oh, that
No
sounds
complaints.
well, speaking of complaints, that is our topic for today. This is such an important topic. We are going to talk about complaining in our relationships because we all love to complain. I know I do. It feels good. It feels good to complain to other people. It can feel good to vent, get it off our chest in the moment. But when it comes to our relationships, it's so easy to fall into this pattern of complaining about what our partner isn't doing right, how they're falling short, how we wish they were different, how we feel let down. This is all very normal human behavior. We complain out loud. We complain to other people. We complain to our partner. We complain just in our heads. That's me. And we often find ourselves the victim of our partner's behavior, and that's why we're complaining. So, unfortunately, complaint is not a very effective relationship strategy. Yet it shows up in almost all of the couples that I work with. It shows up for me personally. I don't know, is this something you see a lot and experience a lot too, Bev, complaints?
Yeah, and especially I would say, people in the female body tend to be less assertive and ask clearly for what they want, because under every complaint is actually a request. And they kind of bring resentment, or you mentioned passive aggressive behavior. I'm going to tell someone else and hope you get the message.
Mhm.
And we always say to our clients, we can't complain about not getting what we never actually asked for. And I was thinking when you sent the topic out, why do we complain? And I would like to hear your thoughts, but one thing that came to mind, and this is where I really want to hear your input, is kind of like a younger part. It's almost like a childlike part. What do you think?
Absolutely. I almost think, like babies cry when something is not
Mm,
right. We have these natural, for one, we have these kind of natural mechanisms. Something is not right, we need to make it known, right? And that's part of our, if we couldn't do that as humans, we wouldn't survive. And I think complaint stems out of that. Like somehow something's not right and I've got to make it known. It's just that's a younger, underdeveloped part when we just do it complaining. That's an unskilled part. That's the younger part. They're just reactive, knee-jerk reaction. Something's not right. It's almost like an adult form of crying or whining,
mm,
right? It's
I love
whining is what it is. And
that.
it's that instinct, I've got to make it known that something's not okay with me, but it's not the adult skilled part, right? There's skilled ways to do this and there's unskilled ways. And complaint, I think, is just that instinctive, unskilled, knee-jerk reaction way. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking of of clients that I had today, where every time I asked the wife to say what she wanted, she couldn't. She kept on saying what she wanted him to do. And I kept
Mhm.
saying, can you? I would stop her and say, can you say it again? What is it you want? She would say, like, I want him to feel more connected to me. So I would say, like, well, firstly, that's a very big concept. What do you mean? What do you want? And the beautiful response I got from her was pausing, from a woman who's very angry, very unbridled. She was kind of stumped, like, what do I want? And that relational pause is what we sometimes want to ask clients to step into. It's very easy to say what I don't want and what our
Mhm.
partner should do better. But what is it that we want?
Exactly. It's complaining is it's the easier way. It's just getting it out. What are we not getting? And why doesn't that work? Why is it that when we complain to our partner about the ways that they're failing us, the ways that they're the problem, the ways that they're frustrating, whatever it is, why, or when we complain to other people about our partners, or why does that not work to create behavioral change? You would think, oh, they're complaining to me, they're not happy, I should change it. Why does this strategy not work? What are your thoughts, Bev?
I think because it comes across as you need to do something, I don't need to do anything. You need to change, I'm okay. And nobody wants to hear, no adult wants to be controlled by another adult. In fact, our children are controlled, but we don't control other adults
Mhm.
and tell them what to do. And I think we just go like this, but you're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah,
So, so that I think it beckons for that kind of response of let's create more distance between us. I need to protect myself and defend myself against what you're saying.
absolutely. I think just like complaining is almost like that whining, a knee-jerk reaction that we have of something's the matter, so I got to whine about it. The opposite response is a protective response, which is also a knee-jerk reaction, right? I got to protect myself against things that are harmful, hurtful, out to get me. So we just have these instinctive responses that are clashing. And the more you complain, the more likely it is the other person is just going to get protective, which looks like defensiveness. Or they will counter complain, right? You're going to complain about me. Well, I'll complain about you and all the ways that you're failing me and that you're not meeting me and what I need. And it's so, and that's why it's a losing strategy. We've talked before about losing strategies. It's this unbridled self-expression, these knee-jerk responses. They don't get us anywhere productive.
Right. And they often come with, you know, what Terry calls, we become essentialists. You never, you always. They get spoken often with a self-righteous indignation. I know how you should be behaving, and it's up to you to make me happy. And again, in this couple today, um, the controlling part was that when I asked them about their complaining, it was the husband said, I need to provide for everything to make her happy. And he met that. And
Mm,
he's already set himself up for major complaint if he thinks his happiness is completely dependent on him.
yeah,
Um,
there's just so many problems that arise out of complaint and what it's inviting into the conversation. What about, because a lot of people like myself, I will complain in my head, but I won't say it out loud, right? I will complain
mm,
a lot in my head. And so what's kind of why is that an ineffective strategy also? I may not be unbridled in my self-expression, but I'm sure complaining a lot in my head. There's
I love that. Um, if I can bring it into my own relationship, very often my husband will complain not to me about something that's happened that he would never speak up about.
Mhm.
And I've often wondered, like, what would happen if you try to see the positive in that or look away from that because you are not going to take it on. And there's almost a satisfaction if it's certainly if it's a political public figure, if someone else takes it on, he gets kind of like worked up and excited that someone has said what's really on his mind and he would just not be able to say.
Mhm.
And it can be quite frustrating being at the other end of that as a partner. I must say that.
Right. There's no vulnerability there of having to like actually speak for what's going on and what's bothering you. There's no vulnerability in complaint, whether it's complaining directly to someone out loud, whether it's complaining in your head, whether it's complaining to another person. You're not actually making a request for something different. You're not actually bringing in an effective way a problem into the relationship. So yeah, I can complain in my head all day long, but if I don't actually like speak up in a skillful way, nothing's going to change, and nothing's going to
Right.
change if you're complaining in an unbridled way either, without skill. So
I
you just
love
say,
what you said. Sorry, keep
no,
going.
go ahead.
I love what you said about the vulnerability. Um, uh, Intimacy, which is this intersection between truth and love, has three parts to it. There's empathy. I can get what you're saying because I might have experienced that myself. I might not have. I know what it feels to get wet in the rain. Then there's vulnerability, which is I'm going to take a risk to tell you what I want, to ask you for what I want, not tell you, ask you for what I want, and you might say no.
Mhm.
And the other part is accountability, where I can say, in this case, where you've said no, I that's okay. That's accountability is often obviously when I haven't done what I said I would do. But in this case, I can say that's a micro disappointment. Can we negotiate it? And that's often the missing piece in intimate relationships. Can
Mhm.
I ask for what I may get? But there's a softening to that. And that's
Yeah.
where the vulnerability comes in. It's so much easier to say, hey, you never. And you're sure as hell not going to want to do that, right? You never give me this. Oh, that doesn't feel very inviting. But if I
Yeah.
say, I'd love to receive this from you, would you be able to do that for me?
Yes, and that's so much skill, and we're gonna talk in the next segment about the skills involved, how to make requests, but I think just understanding that complaint in any form is really just ineffective, and it's not gonna get you what you want. It's just inviting all these other protective mechanisms that are gonna be, it's just gonna keep things so stuck. And so let's talk about where we learned this from. Like, why do we all do this thing of complaining? Besides the fact that there is just kind of this natural component of, I need to let you know that something's wrong in this childlike way. But what about like what we've witnessed growing up in our families about complaint? What are your thoughts about that, Bev?
So for many of us, we don't see our parents making requests in a vulnerable way. For many of us, we see this patterning that we just copy and we think that's what relationship looks like. And you were saying that what it actually does, it creates a wedge and a chasm between couples because one partner is just going to switch off because it's just going to be this constant nagging. And very often, what we do with that and how we learned that is from our families of origin, from our early childminders.
Yeah, and we just model what we see. So yeah, if you saw like one parent just kind of always just unbridledly complaining about all the ways their partner is not meeting their needs or whatever, you may have seen them do that directly to their partner. You may have seen them complain to someone else. Like my mom always calls her sister and complains about dad. And that, you may hear that on the phone all the time. Or what's also really dangerous and damaging is when a parent complains to the child about the other spouse, right? That's a very dysfunctional um, way of
Stance.
complaining, but it's
And
it's a complaint. Yeah.
making the child a surrogate. You get
Mhm.
me so much better than your father does. I love the fact that you were saying about the complaining stance that we see, and very often that bitterness that we've seen in our families of origin, where somebody had to work so hard to get something and never got it, is what we take into our adult relationships.
Yeah. And I do want to point out, it's not that complaint is never unjustified. There might be very good reasons to be complaining in your relationship. There might be a lot of problems. There might be things that need to address. And we'll talk about in the next segment how to address them more skillfully because absolutely things need to be addressed. It's just that complaint is not going to get you what you want. So a quick thought exercise is just to think about, where did you learn to complain? Where did you see that growing up? Did you ever see relationships where people were making more skillful requests, bringing up problems, or just complaining to each other? So we'll talk more about that after our sponsor break. So you're watching
Right.
Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we'll be back in 2 minutes after this break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hi, so we're back talking about how we can move from complaint to request, because underneath every complaint is actually a request. And if we can think about it in terms of what we need, what we want, and we can word it that way as a request. In fact, yesterday I was driving with one of my daughters-in-law, and she was talking to one of my grandchildren. She was saying, if somebody had just asked us, we were in the car, to roll down the window, nobody does that anymore, right? She said, I've chosen the wrong lane. Can I come into your lane? And my daughter-in-law took this opportunity to tell my 8-year-old granddaughter, see, when you ask, she said, I've never asked somebody on the road to do something for me and they've said no. She said, ask. Don't just cut in. She said, take that as a life lesson. I'm not sure what my 8-year-old granddaughter took in, but I thought it was so beautiful when she said, have you ever asked somebody if you could move a lane, change a lane, whatever? I don't think anyone's ever said to me, no, you can't. Mm-hmm. So think about how you can find the request, what it is you want underneath the complaint.
And let's talk about why that's hard. I think it just takes an extra step, right? You have to pause. Again, the complaining is the knee-jerk, instinctive reaction. To do something different, to make a request, like you said, you have to figure out what that request is. Mm-hmm. You have to slow down and actually do some thought and kind of dig into that a little bit. What do I actually want here that I could ask for? That just takes an extra minute. And that's the hard part about relational work, is the skilled effort is slower and it takes more brain calories and more thought. So it's harder always. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think when we're so parked in complaint, or let me put it another way, when we're in our younger parts, we don't see choice. And when we're so parked in complaint always, we think that's the only way we're going to get anything. But when I ask clients, so how's that working out for you? there's always that like, well, it doesn't. And it's almost like a surprise because these really are not skills that we're taught, because I can complain and then, oh wow, boy, I can rev it up and I can make it even louder. Or I can add to it. I can add energy of anger to it. I can do a lot with my complaining and still not get what I want.
I love that you can do a lot with. I'm too. I'm very good at complaining. I can do it in a lot of different forms, a lot of different energy. But yeah, learning to have that same kind of capacities with skilled requests, right? We have to develop that and build that up. So let's talk about how to make requests effectively. Because like you said, we aren't taught these. We just revert to what we know, what's instinctual.
Right.
So if we pause and take a minute, what are some of the elements of a request? Let's talk about how to make a request. What do you want to start with to talk about these skills?
I want to share a story, because what you might find is it's very lovely to talk about in our intimate relationship, how can we include these skills? And it's very important. But most of the people around us are parked in complaint and defensiveness. So, for instance, yesterday, where I had the opportunity to practice this, I was speaking to somebody about a technician about my dishwasher. And he said, okay, I can come on Thursday. And I said, no, that's not going to work for me. And he said to me, so you think that's okay? Now, we're actually not going to even be in the country, but you think you let me know when it's only good for you? It was really aggressive. And I took a breath. I really wanted him to come. I said, could we negotiate a time that would work for both of us? He said, I can be there in half an hour. And it was like, but my first gut instinct was like to close up, climb up, and maybe say to him, you're being so stupid and childish. You're not supposed to talk to a client like that. And many times that is what happens in our lives, that you want to make a request and you're met with this defensiveness. And then it's up to you to see where you can make the shifts and can you take the pause. And then as you asked, one of the things, I said, can we talk about finding a time that would be good for both of us? And that seemed to.
Definitely. It's such an important point that your request, don't expect your request always to be met with acceptance, right? It might make the other person uncomfortable. Even if you do it with skill, they might still get defensive. So, our last episode we did was about boundaries. So this is about having healthy boundaries of I'm going to do my best, and whatever the reaction coming at me, I'm going to put up kind of my psychological boundary to protect myself. So that's so important. And I'm going to do my part. All right. So yeah, you mentioned kind of requesting to negotiate. That's an important part. I think another important part.
Before you go on to that, I just wanted to underline what you were saying about the boundaries. Mm-hmm. That I'm going to put it out there, but I'm not going to be attached to the outcome. I'm going to tell you what I need. And then what comes back to me, as I said earlier, might be a micro disappointment. You might not be able to give it to me right now. Please, can we go out and eat Chinese? No, I don't feel like Chinese tonight. Would you like to go out next week for Chinese? Oh, yeah, that could work.
Yeah. And so maybe this is even like before you even use the skill of making a request is putting up those boundaries. This is like the precursor. This really is the step one. I know part of the reason I complain in my head but don't vocalize it is I'm a people pleaser and I don't want the other person to be upset or feel inconvenienced by my request, right? So for me, part of my kind of pre-work before I even make the request is really to get my courage up and remember why I'm doing this. It's for a healthy relationship. We need, my voice needs to be present in the relationship too. And so your kind of pre-work might be putting up a boundary so that you're okay and you can let go of the outcome and you're not going to take their response personally. It might be bolstering up your courage to speak up in an effective way. So there's a lot of things that you might need to do before you even open up your mouth to make a request.
because today I was in a doctor's office where I felt that the aircon was a little bit strong, and I was shivering, and I thought, well, it's so hot. How can I ask? And then there were about 4 other people sitting in this area, and I said, would it be okay if I asked them to switch off the aircon? And they all agreed, yeah, that was fine. I said, we could switch it on as soon as somebody wants it. So I went to ask the secretary, I said, would you mind? And she straight away said, but you're not sitting by yourself. I said, well, I've actually checked in with everybody. But it took a lot for me to think that I could make that request. And then she gave it to me. And everybody else was like, it's fine. We're good with that. Because it's not, again, it doesn't mean that aircon has to stay off now for the whole time, right? I might have to step out, or if it's too much for me, there are other ways of managing it. It's not an all or nothing.
Yes, I love that. That's so important. That negotiation work is such an important part. We'll definitely, Bev, we should definitely do a whole episode on that negotiation aspect. But yeah, that getting up the courage. Okay, so if you get up the courage to actually make the request and you have good boundaries so that you can handle whatever comes in response without taking it personal, shutting down, giving up, being like, oh, there's no hope, So when you have those in place, then how do you make a request? I think my first tip is to be specific, right? We're not going to make vague requests like, I want you to be more connected to me, or I want you to be more helpful. Those are so general and so vague. The more specific you can get, the better.
Beautiful.
So that's my first tip. Like, just, be very specific about what exactly, like when you come home from work, I would really appreciate if you would take a few minutes to help with the kids, or before you do this, I would really appreciate if you would, right? We're making it very specific.
Right. And I would add to that, another tip is not to have your whole list of 100 things, to
Yes.
choose 1 or 2 for today. Really, I wouldn't go beyond the 3. Could you please, take out the garbage before 9 o'clock? Could you please help with bath time tonight? Tonight doesn't mean it's going to be every night, because you might be out sometimes during bath time, or you might be doing something else. So again, the flexibility within it, but very, as you say, specific, and not everything from here to the moon, so that your partner can take that in.
Yeah, and it needs to be something observable so that you know if they've done it, right? That's the whole goal, is I'm making this request so that you can do it for me. So don't make it something that you can't like actually see that they're doing and measure.
Right.
So again, that's part of being specific. Like you don't request, I want you to work on being more open to my ideas. Well, that's really hard to measure. So more
Right.
specific would be, I would appreciate if when I share an idea, if you would say back like, yeah, that makes sense, or tell them like something specific that you want them to do so that when they do it, you can notice it, right? If it's too vague, you're not going to notice when they do it. And then you can't come back with appreciation. Like, thank you for honoring my request and for meeting me halfway.
And I love what you said at the very beginning. You might need to go to your partner and say, I want to make some requests. Are you open to hearing them now? And they might not just be for you. Helping with the kids with bath time might make the whole house calmer, flow nicer towards bedtime. Everybody benefits. So they're not just personal requests about you. Sometimes they might be, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I love that. And again, that's why this doesn't come naturally, is there's just so much skill involved in slowing down, trying to get specific. Specificity is really hard for people. I noticed that with couples. When you ask them to get specific and name specific things they need their partner, or they want their partner to do, they have a hard time. And using phrases like, as a favor to me, or I would really appreciate, or what would be helpful to me, is like you really being diplomatic in our language, considerate, respectful, can go a long way. So when we come back for the break, from this sponsor break, we'll talk more about common questions that we get around this idea of requests and what kind of goes wrong and where couples get stuck. So you're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we'll be back in 2 minutes after this sponsor break.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, and we're talking about moving from complaint to request. And Suzette, you were saying it just before the break, to speak in language that keeps you on your side of the street as a favor to me, would you? And again, with the same kind of hot clients that I had today, the husband in particular, they were like amazed. He said, "Why do I have to talk like that? It's so not natural." And I said, "Well, how does natural work out for you?" "Oh, yeah, not very well." So these aren't skills that we see or that we swim in as children. And yes, it might sound a little bit false in the beginning, but that is the work of relationship. Relationship isn't just something you have and something that you hope will just get better with time or that you have no influence or agency over. Relationship is work. So if this way is not working, are you open to trying a different way?
I love it.
So
So true.
So you wanted us to jump in with some questions that we get. So here's one from a client. What if my partner doesn't honor my request?
Which is probably very common, right? Not just because we are skilled and we make a request in a great way does not guarantee that they're going to do anything different. That is normal, I think. And so if they don't honor your request, remember that in the real world, right, change doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen fast. It takes sometimes a few tries. So I would say if they don't honor your request and you're doing it skillfully and you're doing it diplomatically, then try a few more times. Try 2 or 3 times. Try the next day. Maybe they're just, again, don't globalize it and catastrophize it. Just, it could be they're not very receptive today. They're not in the mood today. They're not hearing me today. I'll try again tomorrow. And then I'll try again next week. And if after 2 or 3 times they're not honoring your request, then that is something to bring to them. Hey, like, I noticed I'm making this request and can I understand what's keeping you from working with me on this? Like, I want to understand what's going on for you, right? Then you can open up new skilled conversations.
Right. I love that because firstly, our partners don't have to give us everything. And we need to remember that, right, it might be, is this worth asking for again? And then the question you ask yourself, the relational reckoning question that you ask yourself is, where is my line in the sand? Is this something I must have in a relationship? Or is this something I can say, okay, I won't get this from this relationship. I can get it from other relationships. So it might be something like, my partner doesn't like traveling, but I've got a girlfriend who loves traveling, and my partner's very happy for me to go traveling with her. So, yeah, even though that might be a sadness to me, then the question to myself is, am I getting enough in this relationship? Maybe it's wonderful that my partner lets me go traveling with this girlfriend who's actually so much better at traveling together, who my husband has so much, my partner wants has so many specific requests. It's unpleasant maybe traveling together, whatever it is. There might be other positive aspects to your partner not being able to give you exactly what you want.
I think that's so important. So if they're not responding to your request, for one, yeah, look at the request you're making. Is it essential? Are you just because a lot of times we just request things because we want our partner to be like us too, right? Can you do this way? Because that makes me feel better. So you really also have to examine your request. Am I trying to make them be something that they're not? Or is this like a legitimate request for how we can share a life better as two different people, right? Like how can we make our relationship work better? Or is my request actually trying to make them something? Am I staying on my side as treat, or am I asking them to, do things just because I prefer it that way, but it doesn't really
Right.
in the long run? Like these are hard questions. So yeah, if
Very
they're not,
hard.
take a look at all these different elements. Look at your own request. Ask, is this really needed? Am I getting enough good in the relationship without this? These are all such big questions.
What is my value around this? I have a friend that had a vegetarian home, and then slowly she and the children became more vegan. But when they were vegetarians, the husband, that was okay that he ate chicken and that kind of thing. And then one day she turned to me and she said, I no longer want to entertain with any meat in the house, or even milk products and eggs. And I think that would have been a real big discussion between her and her husband. He was 100% on board. He didn't have to have his meat. But that could be a value. This house doesn't serve meat or fish, whatever it is, right? That could be a real value that you want to discuss.
Yeah. And I think all this relates to another common question that I've heard is, my partner thinks I'm controlling because I'm always making requests. So like, how do we deal with that line of, am I being controlling, or is this really a value of mine that is critical and a deal breaker? Am I just trying to make the other person do what I want to do? I don't know. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think firstly, when you think to yourself, am I being controlling? It's a great question to ask yourself. And to ask yourself, is there a judgment around this? And it has to be a binary. It has to be this way or this way. And there's no choice. Children, our younger parts have no choice, but our adult parts can think of choice. So, for instance, let's take that example where of the house becoming vegan. She made the request, and it wasn't, if you don't do this, I'm leaving, because that wasn't her red line. But at first it was, okay, let's have cheese in the house. And then it was slowly she worked on it, and she didn't put it all in one go. From tomorrow, there's no more chicken, meat, milk products in the house. So the two aspects. Number one, can you ask slowly, like I said earlier, not a barrage of requests, and feel your energy. If you don't get that, is there a negotiation around that? Is there a different way you can get that? or must it be just one way? Because that could be very controlling. I would explore that and get curious around that. Why do I need that? And just that.
Yeah. And I think that's part of, we talked about last week about boundaries and kind of the analogy of the catcher's mitt and being able to kind of catch whatever feedback is coming back at you. And instead of just being defensive, looking at it. Is there some truth to that? Do I tend to be controlling? Do I tend to try to dictate what you do as a way to make myself feel better? Is there even a kernel of truth to that? And being open, right? So making requests also might involve being open to the feedback that we get from those requests of you're asking too much from me, or you're I feel like I'm being controlled. Don't just automatically take that in and take that personal, but use your catcher's mitt to catch that and assess, where is there truth in that? Yes or no? And if so, where do I need to work on that?
Right. And if we're looking from the other end, we keep kind of putting us in the position of the requester. But let's say the request is coming our way. To kind of try and lead with where you can be generous in a relationship. So if your partner, we go back to the vegans, look, honey, I don't mind if you eat meat in restaurants, but could we work at now stopping to serve all meat products in the house? To kind of answer with where you can. Yeah, you know what? I can do that slowly over the next month. And
Yeah.
then there's the negotiation. That doesn't work for me. Could you do it a bit faster? Could we revisit this in a week's time?
I love that. That is such an important part, an important thing to talk about, is being on the receiving end of a request. Being open, being generous, being able to negotiate instead of just putting, even if you do feel like the request is maybe a little ridiculous or controlling, how can I still be generous and give and negotiate and be a partner here instead of
Right.
just poo-pooing it?
I know in my own partnership and history, today my husband will sometimes preempt. I know you're going to poo-poo this, or I know you're not going to like this. And just him giving that entrance causes me to take pause and think, wow, he's so used to my coming back with no. It helps me take pause. And then very often the answer is, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Well, that's not such a bad idea. Instead of my knee-jerk reaction of jumping in and like, that's a bad idea. He'll really preempt it. I think you're going to laugh at this, or
Can be so helpful. And again, back to our boundaries. Boundaries are so important, because if your partner makes a request, you also don't want to like take it so personal and go into shame. Like, oh no, I've been doing this wrong, and now my partner's so frustrated, and they must be really unhappy in the relationship, and like catastrophizing it. Really holding those psychological boundaries of this, he's just making this request, and yeah, this is a normal part of relationship work, right? Is to kind of try to find ways to share a life together that works for both of you, and not to take it personal as meaning like your relationship is hurting or anything like that. These are such hard boundary work and skills. All of this comes into play, which is why we don't see so many people doing requests very well and just defaulting to complaining.
And to remember that we don't boundary other people. I was sitting with a client today and she was saying to me, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping. This has to stop. She was talking about her daughter has to stop doing this. I was like, she doesn't have to do anything. You are going to put the limit up. You tell me where you can put the limit up. That your boundary is what you can't stand anymore. What will be the limit?
Yeah.
And how to put that out there to her.
I love that. Let's look at another common question. Let's see. Any request that I make is met with defensiveness. And you talked a little bit about this, Bev, of kind of how to deflate defensiveness a little bit. Like there's ways to flame the defensiveness by also being defensive, but how do you deal with defensiveness around requests?
So I would preempt, like I was saying about my husband, he'll preempt that I'm going to respond in a certain way. So honey, I want to make a request. Are you open to it now? Is this a good time? And I'm asking you, please, not to, you might need to coach them. Please don't jump in with an absolute no. Please, will you listen before you answer? That's all I'm asking.
So good. And I also think anytime we can lead with positive, right? We all want to hear what we're doing well, what people appreciate us about it. So if you can lead with some positives, like I'm so appreciative of all that you do, about her. You're so generous. And not but and can I make a request for something that's related, that's not working for me right now, right? Leading with positive just helps soften so much in conversations. Leading with appreciation and genuine, not just making it up in order to manipulate the situation, but really tapping into where can I see the good before I'm bringing up these problems.
Absolutely. So you're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we will be back in 2 minutes after the sponsor break with our closing.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant. Like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
So Bev and I are talking today about shifting from complaint to request. And so we want to give you some practical homework, some practical tools that you can start using today. And that is to start noticing your complaint. So much of what we do in relationships is just automatic and we don't notice what we're doing. So to try to notice when you're complaining, notice if you're doing it in your head, if you're doing it out loud to your partner, if you're complaining about your partner to other people, and then try to shift into request mode. So Bev and I are not perfect, and I have to work at this. Just last night, I caught myself in complaint mode with my kids. They had this big project, and my son just basically told me how much he had to do last night, and I was complaining to him you should have started this sooner, and I was being snarky. And I had to stop myself because I was like, I'm going to be talking about shifting from complaint to request. I have to practice this. And I had to stop and make a request in the future as a favor to me, because when you have projects, it takes a lot of my energy. Could you try to let me know a few days ahead of time so that I can make sure we have what you need and I can help you, right? Instead of just making these snarky remarks about him waiting till the last minute, which is what I was doing. I was very snarky. And I had to kind of repair and apologize, right? These are all relationship skills. So notice when you're complaining so that you can shift into something better.
Right.
What are your thoughts, Bev?
Yeah, and sometimes I notice with my husband and I that we'll both complain about a point, and that just brings bad energy. We'll feed each other instead of doing anything to make a change or accepting the situation as it is. We're like, oh, I've got to do this family event tonight, right? We don't really want to. And then we'll get there and it'll be fun. But if we're gonna go, then get on board with it. Get on board with the program. It's so much nicer and lighter for you to go with joy.
I agree. So what do you have any tips for how to move out of that when you find yourself
Yeah.
complaining? How to
So
shift to that?
I would take that time to notice where did I learn this from? Either who taught me, who do I do this to, and nobody stopped me. Where did I see this growing up? And then think about what are even small steps you can take to start really saying what it is you want and not to carry around the resentment of not getting what you never asked for. And even if you think of something that you regularly complain about, let's say every night, have you locked all the doors or whatever it is? Could you please lock the doors tonight? Or just think of one thing that you can make a change of in the week, in the day,
Mhm.
and watch the
I love that.
magic.
Yeah. And all of this just starts with noticing. We can't do anything different unless we notice. And I love what you brought up, Bev, of thinking, okay, where did I learn this from? But what do I want? I don't want what maybe my parents had. I don't want that kind of relationship. I want something better. So I'm going to do something different in this moment, even if it's going against every grain of my body. In fact, one of my clients one day, we were talking about how to do something different. He said, so basically, I have to go against the grain of what's happening in my head and in my body. And I said, exactly. That is really go against the grain of what's happening inside of you, and instead choose something more skillful. So
Right.
let's
It's a
go against the
muscle.
grain of complaining. Yeah, practice that
Think of it
muscle
as a
of
relational muscle.
Mhm. So let's all together working on our skills of requesting instead of complaining, myself included. This is daily work that we all have to do and practice to build those muscles. Any other thoughts on complaining, Bev?
I also think when you complain, you haven't seen the other person's perspective. Why didn't you do this for me today? You haven't thought, did you have time? What else was going on in your life today? It's just about me and seeing sort of this tunnel vision and being aware of that before you complain that somebody hasn't done something for you. Maybe be curious about what's been going on for them that day. We
Oh,
think people are spending their lives just thinking about us, which in my case I know is true, but for most of us, it's not true. People are busy with their own lives.
that's so true. Love that. Well, let's kind of end with this quote that I love. This is from Terry Real. He said, complaining will never motivate your partner to give you more of what you want. If anything, it will drive a bigger wedge between you. And that goes with your partner, with your kids, with any relationships. Complaining is just not effective. So work on moving into something more effective, like requests. So let's talk about where people can find us. And if you have anything coming up, Bev, that you want to talk about, tell
Okay,
people
so
where they
thanks for joining us today. You've been watching us on Two Couples Coaches, Bold Brave TV. We're live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. ET, and you can also find us on all major podcast and platform and video platforms. We'd love to hear from you. This is for you. Come in, join us, send us your questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes to Two Couples Coaches. That's one word, all spelled out, TWO, at gmail.com. This will all be in the show notes. You can follow us on social media and YouTube, and you can visit our individual websites also on the show notes. And there you will see that I am going to be running a group for couples starting the beginning of June. All the details are on my website. So if that is something that you feel would be an easier way to start doing some couples work, because it's a little bit less intrusive, come along and join me. I'd be happy to have you there.
Thanks for this conversation, Bev. And thanks to everybody for joining us and for listening. And if you've ever asked yourself, how do we make our relationships stronger, healthier, more fulfilling, then this podcast is for you. We'll hope that you continue to join us and listen in. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.
Till next time.
This has been Two Couples Coaches with your hosts, Bev and Suzette. Tune in each week as Bev and Suzette share expert insights, have heart-to-heart conversations with guests, answer listener questions, and dive into the challenges and joys of building a life together. Because in relationships, just like in life, growth happens when you show up, stay curious, and keep evolving together. Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.